you for attending our presentation of the SAU 13 preschool proposal. So it's great to see so many faces in the audience tonight. Madison knows how to show up. This is our largest crowd, so thank you. This is great. So first, I'd like to talk to you about the 5 or 6 month journey that we've been on so far as a preschool committee. And I want to just recognize a few people here tonight that are served on this committee, and thank you for their time. So I want to thank my Director of Student Services, Lisa Dubois. I want to thank Paula Lassard, Heidi Dunlop, Sarah DiMartino, and Heather Sherwood. And Heather Woodard is right over there. There we go. I think I got everybody. Fantastic. So before we get into the current challenges, which Lisa is going to speak to, we want to talk to you about how this model is going to be a strategic model in providing a model for early childhood that is going to make sense on 2 prongs, financially and educationally, that aligns with our fundamental mission that supports students academically, social, emotionally, that we can see more students in the pipeline, educate our students here, and really it's about options. This is about providing options for students, not to say that one place isn't doing things fantastic. We think we'll have an excellent program, but this is about providing options for students. So I'll turn it over to Lisa to talk about the current challenges we're facing.
Yeah, so currently all of our preschool students are scattered across the valley. We have 9 different preschools that we're working with. Some of those preschools are able to provide services for us that we can contract with them. Some of them we have to provide the staff to go and do that. You know, just based on that, it presents with some challenges in ensuring that we're providing equitable access to services and what those interventions and supports look like. You know, some of the basics that happen when you're sending staff out of buildings into these different preschools is there's a lost instructional time for the kiddos that are in the buildings in our elementary schools, for the travel time for them to get to the preschools. There's differences in programming, so there's a lack of consistency for our kiddos coming into kindergarten as well. You know, there's a lack of workforce out there, so having to spread people so thinly doesn't help us keep people. It also doesn't provide us with more people to do it either, and so that factors into maintaining compliance for special education as well for our kiddos with IEPs. We don't have a lot of control over those costs that are coming to us when our kids are spread out like this, and what that looks like. We're contracting, and whatever that contract says is we are kind of locked into in order to get those services. There's also a lack of availability for preschool services in the Valley. There's wait lists everywhere. And so with that, we also recognize that by having another preschool as an option, it could impact preschools that are in the area, and that's not our intent. Our intent is to provide another choice for families. It is by no means intended to take away from, and it's not really a challenge, but I'll talk about it a little bit at this point as I'm on it, is that, you know, parents that are happy where they are, we're not asking them to change or move if this were to go forward. We're just giving them another option if that's what works better for them. It's by no means a way of saying you have to come to us or you have to go there. It just will lend itself for another choice for people is what we're hoping for. So our rationale behind it. And I think at this point I'd like to talk a little bit about what the program that we're talking about looks like, because that will help with some of the rationale piece. So we're looking at a early childhood program within one of the buildings. We've narrowed it down to Madison has a space that looks like it would be good. It's more centrally located than previous programs in the district. We're looking at a 5-day program per week, full day option, half day options. The program would be early childhood, so it would require us to have 51% of the population be students that are not identified or have special education services or IEPs, and 49% could be that. Once you tip that scale of having more kids with IEPs, it becomes a special ed program, and that's not what we're looking to do. We're looking to have a play-based, developmentally appropriate program for all students. So that's, and with that, there's some other pieces that we'll talk about later that will play into what that programming looks like. But our rationale around this is to have a cohesive and coordinated approach to addressing the diverse needs of all of our preschoolers. Having our resources in one place, working with our kids, where we can see them more often. I was just mentioning to somebody that I haven't gotten to a preschool in a while, you know. At the beginning of the year I was able to get into them, so don't really get to see what's happening. And it's not bad, but it's hard when you don't know what's really happening out there. It allows for our educators, therapists, specialists to all be collaborating more seamlessly together and more effectively. Families can benefit from more of an accessible and coordinated system, reducing their burden of having to navigate multiple locations for their child's educations. Here in Madison, you're kind of unique because you have quite a few preschool families that bring their students in for services. That's not necessarily happening in other towns within this district. So some of these kiddos are going to a preschool, but then their parents are bringing them in to receive services here. Their choice, but it's a little bit unique. And be one less thing for them to have to do if they were here for preschool. And it's just a strategic step for us to enhancing the delivery of our special education services and seeing what that looks like as our kiddos come up through and move into kindergarten. I don't think Mike said this at the beginning, but at any point, questions, concerns, anything, throw them out there at us. This is not like
Took the words out of my mouth.
a stage like, go on, so.
Can I actually ask a question?
Absolutely.
Does Freedom still offer preschool?
No.
Okay.
And
But that's a great
Superintendent
segue.
Whalen is gonna talk about, because that, yeah.
So would this preschool be offered to Tamworth, Freedom, and Madison?
Yes.
That's correct.
Yeah, all three recipes.
Would it be offered to other towns or just the SAU?
It would be just SAU 13 to start. That's not to say that we couldn't down the road think about that, but I think as we're trying to get the program established, we would reserve those seats for SAU 13 students.
If you didn't happen to have those numbers, though.
That would be something we would look towards,
Right.
certainly.
Yeah, I think there's definitely options there.
So let's talk about the previous program in Freedom, and that was not a plant. I did not suggest that question. So the previous history, SAU 13, we did have a program in Freedom. The earliest data we could find in this program was going back to 2009, 2010. So here you're going to see, as Lisa spoke to earlier, our special education population and then our total enrollment. So we had a fairly healthy program. Our number we want to be around is about 24 students. We think that's our sweet spot. Talking with Lisa about our outside providers we're currently working with, we think that's a number that wouldn't impact those programs. We've had some conversation, some have attended some of our previous information nights. Lisa's had conversations in those circles. So we think that that would be a good number that fits pretty well without impacting those other services. And we do know that there's wait lists currently in some of those programs. So that's something we want to be cognizant of. So as we look at this enrollment, obviously, as we head down from 2009 to 2019, we see a drop in enrollment. That was the last year of the program. And why this program really ended was because one district held the financial burden of the whole program. So if there's not a lot of students attending, that district still needs to maintain that workforce and carry that budget. Because that was not under the SAU umbrella, which is what we're proposing, we'll have a more stable apportionment formula that each district knows how much they're paying each year and can properly budget for that. So that's a little bit of the history in Freedom. Great program. We had Marcia Dewson, who was the previous preschool teacher in Freedom, served on this committee, and we got a little bit of history about how the program ran. And we're going to run things fairly similar. It's going to be a play-based program. Lisa's going to talk about the scheduling a little later. But that's our history in Freedom. Questions? Oh boy, all right, yes.
I know you guys sent out a survey.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you get more than 24? Like, this feels low for three towns with 49% IEP leaving, obviously the 51% for non.
That's the proposed number. That's not to say that that's set in stone and we can't move it. That room, I believe, will hold up to 30 students if I'm 27. 27 students. It's right down here on the left.
Oh, yeah.
If folks want to take a look at it at some point, sorry Heather, I'm offering up your building. If folks want to take a look at that room,
$10 tuition.
Jim's collecting.
And I think to your point though too, I think in the model where we're talking about offering half day and full day, it wouldn't just be 24 students that could be serviced because of that model. You could have, some that are only doing half days, so it could be 2 students per 1 slot, so to speak, if that makes sense.
Understood,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Other questions? Yes.
So
for that amount of students, how many are you looking per day? Like, what would your highest number a day be?
That's a good question.
And how many staff would you have in there? And would you count your one-on-ones? Because some of those kids will come with paras.
That's right.
So will you count those paras into your ratio, or how would you do that?
We're counting right now, we're budgeting for a teacher, we're looking for dual certified, regular ed and special ed, and a full-time para to be in that classroom. So we haven't incorporated the one-on-ones into that ratio. We're basing it off of one teacher and one full-time para to serve as a general classroom mate.
Okay. Max a day for students, though, what would that be?
It would be that 24 at one time in the
But
class.
for
I don't know.
early, I'm putting on, I have two hats here.
Sure.
Parent hat and-
Absolutely.
You're right.
So,
DHHS,
early
you don't have so
childhood
many in
has-
that ratio.
yeah, so for
Public school
25,
doesn't
you need
have
3.
that problem.
Even if you're a early childhood. Okay.
Because it's a public school program, it doesn't fall under DHHS, which regulates that portion of it.
Okay. So you don't have to follow any of those regulations, so you're one to, that's a lot of kids for 2.
It wouldn't be, I don't envision there'll be 24 children there and 2 students. I think it will, we're thinking Paul.
We're gonna talk about the,
Yes,
oh,
we
sorry to
had
interrupt,
all-
go ahead, Paula.
We had also talked about that in the preschool. I worked in the preschool for them. I was the OT there. And the OT speech and PT would always filter into that classroom. So not only with kids with IEPs would have that, they'd also,
Yeah.
we'd also help with the numbers and with the activities and different things in the class. Not all the time, but we'd be in there. So that's just another piece to it.
But I know exactly what you're saying. Like, if
Yeah.
you think about having 2 adults and 24 kids in there that are 3 and 4-year-olds, you're like, whoa, how is this gonna
Right.
really
Yeah.
happen?
If any said adult would want to do that, they'd be crazy anyways.
What is the age? What is the age for this exact preschool program?
They have to be 3
3
and
to-
until they're a compulsory age to go to school.
It doesn't have a name, it just says.
So, and with that, you'll
Not
have,
having
and
much
that's part of the
luck with
program, I'll talk while he's doing that. So within that, because we do have to hold some spots for students that have IEPs and kids turn 3 throughout the school year, there's always going to be slots open and available. It's never going to be at max capacity because we can't predict how many kids are going to need that service. If parents were to choose it, we need to keep some slots open for that as well.
I have another question.
Yeah.
When you keep saying choose, parents choose, on the IEP side of things, I'm putting on my like taxpayer head brain. If this is the program being offered by the SAU, shouldn't this be the program that they have to come to?
It's always an IEP team decision, so an IEP
Okay.
team
But, well, yeah, if we don't have the
can
services
make that
here.
decision to say that we think that there's a program that would support that student or provide the
Right,
services.
but
to
the
provide.
parent can't opt to go to a service elsewhere that's more expensive? Because I know you said there's a financial goal here
Mhm.
too.
Yes, we're gonna get to that.
And that's to control
But
outside
they can
service fees.
decide, is that correct? The parent can decide. if-
I think at this point, we're saying that parents can decide, because we have some kiddos that maybe are gonna be 4, and if they've been in a program that they're secure in, I don't think it would probably be in that child's best interest to pull them out of a program for a year to then have them be reintroduced to another transition into school kind of things. I think there's some working pieces to it as it evolves. I think we're trying to put as many pieces together as we can without really knowing what all of the balls that we're juggling are on some level. But to your point, that it is an IEP team decision, and an IEP team could say that, this program wouldn't be the best, it may be at another local
Right.
place.
Yeah, I get from the service standpoint, just from the cost standpoint, I was curious if it was gonna be really like honed in here over other services.
Would we like it?
I think that's the
Probably,
whole,
but I think I think that, again, we wanna honor and respect people's choices as well, and the other schools that are out there, preschools that are out there right now too.
So is it going to be full day or half day?
Yep.
You
We'll have
guys
both
just need to,
options. So that's the goal.
okay, so it won't be one or the other, you're gonna be offering both.
Yes, so you may choose as a parent that I have a 3-year-old and I don't want them in a full day program, as a non-identified student, so you could send them for the 2.5 hours for the morning session. Or you may say, I want them in there for a full day. And there is a cost for students that are not identified, so it's not a free program to those students.
children that have IEPs now are only going half day. Are you asking families to pay the cost difference if they want to stay for the whole day program,
Yes.
or, okay.
Oh, man.
Having some
Got
challenges.
that electronic touch to it.
Yes, it's going well. All right, so we want to talk to steps from where we've been to where we're going. As I mentioned, we had this committee start in really August, where we made up a budget that you'll see shortly, that we talked about some of the factors that go into that budget. We reached out to families via survey. We had 67 respondents to that. Of that, 53% were Madison residents, so you guys win the gold medal there. We had the most respondents from Madison. We utilized that information to do a few things, to talk about what the program would look like, where it would be located, transportation needs, programming. We're going to talk about unified arts. We're going to talk about related services through an RTI model. So some of those really important factors that families desired in a program. In addition to that, there's going to be some, if the warrant is to pass, so that's the next thing. So from a wider lens, what needs to happen is you're going to see the SAU budget on the warrant. That is, the preschool is incorporated into the SAU budget. So if that were to pass, we would be doing a few things. We'd be doing a renovation to the space, which would be a minor renovation just to upgrade a few pieces. We'll talk about the actual budget in there, but some of the furniture, some of the supplies, we would need an approved playground. So we'd be looking to do a playground with some fencing as well, to make sure that we have an approved preschool playground.
It's a separate playground.
That's correct, a separate playground, absolutely. So we'll be looking at, again, finalizing that infrastructure. We would need to, I'm really getting to the weeds here, but we're going to be looking at a potential administrative lease agreement with Madison to handle some of the administrative costs, the facilities costs, some of those things that would be built into this budget. So be looking at some sort of MOU with the SAU itself. And then we'd reach for approval from the state. And those are the key pieces from here until fall of next year. Questions about that? Yes.
In terms of the playground?
Yes.
Is that going in this playground?
No, we have a potential space for that would probably be towards the front or side of the school, but it would be fenced in per regulation, but it would be separate from this.
So roadside.
That's one location. That's one potential location where the there might be some removal of some of those garden beds.
So you're trying to get us our playground.
I was trying.
I know.
Apparently.
So that's an option, and then there's been another option of kind of partitioning off some of that playground. So we've had some conversation about that. Location hasn't been finalized, however, we know we're going to need a playground. So as we do these informational nights, we probably learn more from you than you learn from us. So any feedback you have about that, we'd greatly appreciate.
What about rooftop with elevator access? Just checking.
I'll get back to you in an email about that.
Jim's had a lot of rest.
So let's talk about the business plan. So the business plan, obviously our first primary focus is at the educational portion. However, when trying to get a new program through, the business portion and the financials is very important. So what's in this budget? You'll see that we have a full-time early childhood dual certified special education teacher. That's the ideal candidate we'd be looking for, a full-time paraprofessional. At the moment, transportation would be on the individual districts. So the SAU would encompass all the programming, staffing, but the transportation at the moment would be funded through the individual districts.
And that would just be special education transportation.
Thank you, Lisa.
It is not for all students at this point. That was part of the survey, that we thought that transportation was going to be something that parents would be looking for. It really didn't come in that way.
Yes, great
So
point.
if a student were to be coming all day, let's say it's a Madison student, could they take the Madison school bus?
I do not believe so, but we'd have to talk to busing, I think because of age and
Yeah,
restraints that need to be.
You still need-
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought I knew the answer, but I wanted to check. Thank you.
We'd be looking at, again, that MOU to cover some of the costs for the hosting district, which would be, right now the proposed district is Madison. So some of those costs that would go into lunch, cleaning spaces, all those other type of administrative costs, any reporting absences. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but some of that stipend compensation as we think about how we're going to be compensating our Unified Arts staff and our RTI staff. I said I wouldn't get ahead of myself, but here I go. In our proposal, what came resoundingly clear in some of the surveys was having our students, our pre-K students, being exposed to Unified Arts, our art, our PE, all those pieces that create that well-rounded student. So that's some of the daily schedule we'd be looking at. So when we're talking also about just 1 or 2 people in that room, we'd be having more push-in model through our Unified Arts. We'd also be looking, again, I mentioned the playground, and I also want to mention, as we talked about that push-in through an RTI, many of our students in preschool are on related services through PT, OT, speech. So by being able to push in some of those services for all students, we can greatly make a deeper impact. So that's something we're proposing as well with the guidance of our related services. Questions? Let's talk about revenue. Anticipated revenue, we'd be looking at tuition. We're going to talk about what that tuition rate looks like. Possibly before and after school programming. That's something that came through on our survey as well. Madison has a program in place already, so we'll be looking at leveraging that to incorporate for our preschoolers. Possibility of transportation, and then looking at services that would be reimbursable through Medicaid through eligible students. The cost per district would be a portion. I'm going to get to those pieces. And again, each district will be billed for their own contracted services. Questions?
So you have Tamworth and Freedom bringing their OT over here?
No, we would.
You have the OT in Madison doing that?
That's correct.
Or PT and?
That's correct. We'd be looking for the OT and speech in-house. We
In-house,
currently
okay.
don't have PT, but we'd be looking, if that was needed, we'd push it with that.
But Tamworth and Freedom would pay their portion of what those services are.
So the financials, I just want to paint the picture here, and I'll get a little more into, from mile high, funnel down into the granular level. So in 2023, as an SAU, we spent $176,440 in preschool costs. SAU-wide in 2024, where we are at the moment, is $119,087.
What's the fiscal?
The fiscal costs?
No, like the year. What are we a fiscal like calendar year right now?
No.
Or are we a school year?
June
Fiscal year.
30th.
July 1 to June 30th.
Okay.
Looking at Madison, last year what we spent was $87,706, and where we are currently is $63,000, $63,823. So that's where we are now. So we know we need to make some changes because this is not a sustainable model where we're at. So looking at our proposed budget, our total budget here is $250,000. Our proposed budget incorporates that teacher. This was budgeted mid-step on a family plan because we need to, that's how we budget for all our staff, because we don't know if we're going to get someone at the bottom of the scale or top of the scale, so that's really budgeted conservatively. We have our para the same way. We budgeted $8,500 for contracted services, $4,776 for supplies, equipment's $15,000, new furniture $8,000, building improvements $10,721. And then that MOU piece to align with administrative teaching facilities, those extras was at $10,000 for that grand total of $250,000.
And the building improvements includes the playground?
That's right. So I can break that out a little bit. Some of these are one-time costs, and this slide will kind of show that. So as we look at our proposed budget and we get over here to one-time expenditures of that program, pretty much those things like we're seeing for the slight renovation in the classroom to get that up to speed for a preschool setting, the playground, some supplies that we're going to need to freshen up, for lack of a better term. We do have some that are still in Freedom currently, but we'll have to take a closer eye on that. When we factor in estimated student tuition for our non-identified students, we're looking at, and then a savings of a quarter. So this is based on a quarter savings of what we're spending currently on contracted services, which I think is pretty conservative. I think we could probably get that another quarter out of that for half. The new total for that program is $138,629. So that would be year 2. So once we get into year 2, that's what we're looking at, because there's some initial startup cost with that $250. So our year 1 would be $250. Year 2, once the program is established, we'd be at that new number. Yes,
So-
Jim?
And I'm just thinking, I got my school board hat on for a second here. The new total being 138,629,
Yes.
which would exclude the tuition side of things there. We would still have to budget for 190,000 because the expenditure will go to offset the taxation side of the line.
Yes.
So, just so people don't get in their head that, next year you said it'd be 139,
Right,
but
right,
it's
right.
190,
Yep.
what'd you do wrong?
Right. No, that's a great point. That's a great point. And currently, right now, we're budgeting for the warrant for the 250, and then we're also budgeting for what our projected costs are, because if the warrant were to fail, we need to have a backup plan to continue the status quo.
And the contracted services could be 0, because it makes it seem like the parents can opt to not come to the
That's
school.
right. Special ed is a moving target,
Right.
so it makes things a little tricky sometimes to budget.
Right.
But the main philosophy from a financial standpoint of looking at this model is we have more control over that. And then once we see kids in our program, we have a better idea of what's in the pipeline, which also helps. And that tuition number, I want to break that down for a minute, is based on, I believe that's based on 13 students, based at the daily rate of $22.50 for a monthly rate of $450, budgeting at those students being full-time. So that's
All day.
that's all-day program. So that's a high number, but we wanted to at least max that out so you could see the full potential revenue of that student tuition. And that's compensated here because that's a low number of what we're projecting for savings here.
It's 13 because you have to have more
Right.
non-identified
Right.
than identified.
Thank you, Lisa.
Taking that into account.
Can you say that again? What would it be for a full day and what would it
Full day
be?
program, we would have $22.50 a day, and then the monthly total would be $450. And that's based on, we've done a lot of comps on rates, and obviously private and public preschools are very different. So we've been looking at it for an apples to apples model, looking at other public preschools.
And that obviously there'd be extra fees for before and after.
That's a great point, yes. Before care would be a separate piece.
And a half a day, what?
Half a day
I think we
was,
split it right in half.
I think that was
Yeah.
essentially worked out to
Yeah.
12, I think it was a split, 1250, I believe. It was pretty much a split.
1175. Say it was 2250.
12,
How much is a full day?
2250, 11, 25. There we go. Thank you, Heather. Both the Heathers are keeping me straight on the math here.
Matthews. Did you want to talk about what Madison's?
I do,
Yeah,
I
that
do,
was it,
thank
because
you.
that was a piece of
Everybody's
that,
helping
too.
me out tonight, this is great.
Well, okay.
So I want to talk about, we talked a little bit about the SAU apportionment, so I want to talk to you about what the SAU apportionment looks like. Right now, Madison, as apportionment, they pay 35.49% to the SAU. So we use that same math to factor in how much they would pay for the preschool. So based off the first year number, that $250,000, the share of that budget would be $88,725. So that's based on the potentials for year 1 that Madison would be responsible for. In the second number I gave you, that $138,629, same apportionment. The apportionment doesn't change, but the share of the budget drops to $49,199. When we look at the tax impact of that full budget, the tax impact would be 14.7 cents, which equates to $14.65 per thousand. Per 100,000, excuse me, per 100,000. Say that again. 14.65 per 100,000. questions on the math or the
So it's
breakdown.
being split kind of evenly between the schools, even though Freedom has very few children.
Yeah, so just for a point of reference, I'll give out those three other apportionments. So Freedom's apportionment to the SAU is 26.07, Madison is 35.49, and Tamworth is 38.44.
And if you get one of these handy books before you leave, the apportionment information is in there as the SU budget is too.
Thank you, Heather. It's very helpful.
Would the proportions of the kids coming from each district be similar to that? In the breakdown of 13 and, like,
I think
does
you're-
Madison get 6
yeah.
spots and Tamworth get 8?
Right, that's a
Freedom
question,
5?
yes, that's a question that
math
we're,
doesn't line up,
obviously
but-
we'd want to work that out.
Sorry.
Yes, no, that's a great, no, again, we learn more from you than you probably learn from us at these. So, yes, that is something that we still are working through, but we'd want to probably keep that reserve spot similar to its apportionment number. So, you know, if we factor out that percentage, we're gonna try to save as many of those seats as we can for those students up front, but think about it that way. Obviously, if things, you know, were to change, we'd have to look at that in that moment.
And I think historically, obviously, Freedom's had lower numbers of preschoolers. Tamworth and Madison, I think go back and forth between who has, but they're pretty equal. I think right now, I think they're both at 9 right now, the preschoolers that we have that are identified.
And is the full day, is it going to be the same hours as the school hours for the students?
Great question. So, let's see if I can get this right the first time. So,
Just say yes.
just say yes. So what Lisa and I talked about is basically going to be a 2.5-hour program for these kiddos. So starting off from 9 to 11:30, and then at 12:30 to 3, right after each session, with a full day option. So you have the option to go full day, but those would be the AM and PM sessions.
And that
So
full day
school
would
is 9
include
to
that lunch.
3:30.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
School is 9 to 3:30.
3:20, right? 3:30, depends.
For all intents and purposes.
Yeah.
So this slide just talks a little bit about the research, obviously. These will all, if you are interested in getting this PowerPoint or any of the financial breakdowns, I'd be more than happy to provide that to you. If you just leave your email, Heather's already on top of it. Thank you, Heather. I'd be happy to get you any information that you're looking for. I got some great questions from you as we continue to develop, as we continue to funnel down on a daily basis what this program continues to look like into the granular level. But really what I wanted to highlight is that this program really is an investment. Every dollar that we spend on early ed will save us $7 down the road. We know that the costs that we're seeing are escalating. It's not sustainable the way we're doing things currently. We had a really great program in the district, as I mentioned earlier, in Freedom. We think having the program here in Madison is more centralized and a little less off the beaten trail. So we think this is a great model for education, that we can get a better look at our kids. We can provide those UAs, we can provide that push-in service, and get a better handle on being proactive when it comes to the financial aspects. So this is our program overview, and if there's, again, any questions, happy to field them. Half hour, budgeted for an hour, so I'll be here for another half hour if you want to talk.
Will the presentation be on the website, the SU website?
I believe it will. That's a great suggestion. It'll be on the website.
I actually have a comment and thought. This is like super exciting to me. The reason being is I never know when a little is going to show up on my doorstep, but I
Sure.
also was able to experience it firsthand with my youngest, who was kicked out of every daycare in the area and ended up at Freedom for 2 years. And it was an incredible program, and I can say it ended up saving you guys a lot of money because he had a one-on-one, and had we not done that earlier, we would have ended up in this school and he would have had a one-on-one for a lot longer. You know, so I just am all for it. I think we need it. I think it's gonna benefit a lot of people. My one comment is, I worry about the full day program. I know as soon as my kiddo got off the bus, he took a nap.
Sure.
He was exhausted.
Sure.
I feel like there's a potential for this place to become a dumping ground, doing before and after school, and that is a lot for that age group. this needs to be a positive experience. We're talking about a lot of kids that are coming from sitting at home on a screen full time, not knowing how to communicate, not knowing how to role play or sit in a seat for a period of time. So I would just say that you may want to really think deeply about how long those kids are gonna be here.
I really appreciate that feedback. That's something that we've talked about a little, but I think that you really summarized that nicely. And I think ultimately what we're trying to do is find that sweet spot for options for people, but I really do appreciate that. Yes?
I know, like in preschools, they have, if they're there for so many hours, they have to have like a rest time.
Yes.
Like, will that be something?
Absolutely, yes. If
that
we're,
we have
yes,
to have here
100%,
as well
yes.
and then, so my kid, I was always one that didn't want them to nap because they would sleep for hours at school and then go home and not sleep
Sure,
again,
sure.
And so I was never like a cheerleader for the nap time, but will it be like if the kid falls asleep, they are allowed to sleep for, like hours, or like knowing that they need that rest possibly, or is it like just a quiet time where they look at books? Like how would that look
Right.
for?
Well, I'm gonna say and again, this is kind of getting into the real granular level, but
Yeah.
first of all, when we interview the teacher, we're really looking for someone that buys into the philosophy that we have here. Then that's play-based education for preschool. That we're introducing students to, a school-based setting, and it's not meant to be, a rigorous kindergarten program. So it's a play-based program that's going to get these students, at that level, be familiar with the school. There's so many wins to getting our kiddos in the school, not only for the kids, but for our staff as well, that can get acquainted with them. And again, provide that intervention early, because every year we can get to those students early or identify students early. You can't put a cost on that. You can't put a value on that. I mean, that's so important to do for our families and kids. But I'll let Lisa answer that question just about the nap time, the scheduling, that sort of piece.
Yeah, and I haven't had experience in a public school program with a full day program, so I'm not sure. I think what I envision is more of a rest time, but if a kiddo does fall asleep, I think that we honor that, and I think that there's set up for that, and I think that we have kiddos that come into kindergarten, also come to a full day program, that we find a lot of kids end up napping initially. So I don't think that's a hard one way or the other, but I envision it more as that rest time, quiet time type of thing. But again, teacher and what that program ends up looking like from their perspective, I think is going to be impactful in that as well.
That interview is going to be really, really important, to finding the right person for that job. I'm confident we'll be able to do it, but we want this program to be fun. We want kids to be excited about coming to school, and we want to just have an excellent program where kids, if they need a nap, you can take a nap, Absolutely.
I would like to follow up on that. Just, I know you guys mentioned 24 students with a morning program, but is there an afternoon option? Can you get dropped off at 12:30? So that concerns me, I guess, as a parent, because that is like peak rest time. And so how does a kid coming in mix in with a whole class that's there all day, tired and sleeping?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we're working with some survey data that had a low sample size, but these are some of the things that people have worked for. This is the proposed model, but this isn't something that we're going to etch in stone and say this is the way it's going to be. But we thought that was something that some parents may not want and some parents may want. So looking at preference, we really want to get that out early. What's your preference, AM, PM? And we think based on the information, we had a pretty healthy mix of families that wanted, I want AM, I want PM, those sort of things.
Okay. And I think honoring a schedule too that maybe incorporates that, and a lot of times that afternoon program typically is your older kids, if they're coming in for a half day, that you have your younger kids in the morning because they do nap in the afternoon and go home. So I think that, honoring that maybe, there's a portion of the class that's there for the whole day, that's when they go, maybe have some time in the gym, or they go out and have a recess time when these other kids that are still needing a rest time are doing that. I think there's ways to work for everybody, but it's a great point, because I think you're right. I think some of those kids that are there all day are going to be
especially like to her point, like I'm a working mom and my husband has a job, and we utilize CU and it's great, and we drop off at 8 and we pick up at 4:30, and if Isla didn't have a nap, life might end.
Right?
I will speak to that. We go down hard. She goes down for an hour and a half and she's gone. I'm like, if she's getting she's there all day, then mixed in with a 12:30 group that's like raring to go, like that,
Right.
that would be good for her at all. So I definitely would wanna see like what the schedule breakdown would be like and how they could get that rest for the all-day kids to flourish.
Yeah. I agree with you,
Yeah.
100%.
That's great feedback, thank
And
you.
she'll be like the 4-year-old, she still needs the nap.
Yeah.
Hi there. I just want to say thank you guys so much for, I know that there's probably a tremendous amount of work that went into organizing all of this. And I'm an advocate of, I hope that our future is like 0 to 5 years old, we have, options for public preschool and daycare, because that would be so wonderful, because childcare is really expensive and really hard for parents. And I wanted to ask, I teach at Bartlett School. I'm curious if you guys have talked to them about, they had a private and they switched over to public.
Yes, we have had some just anecdotal, just really brief conversations, but as we start to, now that we've honed this in to figure out where we want to go, that is something that we plan on having some more in-depth conversation.
And if you want, help contacting the right people and help you to.
I really appreciate that, thank you. And to your earlier point, thank you very much. And I have a great group of dedicated individuals for the past 5 months that have met after school and just done a lot of heavy lifting and that are very supportive, so thank you. Yes?
I had a question about the UAs. I'm assuming you're planning on utilizing the current UA staff here at Madison.
That's the idea, yes.
So just questions about scheduling, how that works with the current K through 6.
Yes.
And then also, since you're utilizing Madison staff, is that cost of their salary gonna be offset?
That's a
from
great
the
question. So
districts?
what we're proposing in that initial slide that I threw a bunch of numbers at you earlier is the proposed idea, and this hasn't gone to the union, so I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but there would be some sort of stipend for picking up that piece.
Okay.
And that would be a scheduling, unified arts around the schedule that Principal Woodard, I've just volunteered for her help to do that. So.
Pick up and drop off for the preschool program, is that at the same time and at the same in and out as the regular children?
The idea for preschool, drop off and pick up would be at this door over here.
So with K through, I don't know, just kidding, 3 through 6?
It's 3 through 6 there now, so yes,
Yeah,
it would
so it
add
would be
preschool.
3-year-olds mixed in
Well,
with the 3 through 6.
We've talked
getting
about
dropped off there.
Staggering, yeah, and that the idea would be a 2.5 hour.
And parents
yeah.
don't bring their kids in to drop them off and get them settled into the preschool program, because I know kindergarten is not like that.
We would be looking at those routines, and I know how important it is for, separating from, I'm a new dad myself, so I totally understand that when, we're bringing new kids into the school for the first time, so that's something that we would want to have some procedures around and be sensitive to that, absolutely. So I think and thank you for that feedback, having that staggered start time would be very helpful when we're trying to get the little guys in.
It's pretty easy at drop off though, not, like there's one car
Yeah,
there and then
yeah.
the kids go in and then we usually wait. Sometimes my kids are impatient and they run ahead. Speaking for my own, but it's pretty like policed there.
Yeah.
It's not really chaotic at all or anything like
Except for
that.
Mr. Frum.
In my
Fixing
opinion,
them.
right? Except for my children, but that's just them.
In previous districts I've worked in where there's a preschool program, they arrive maybe 10 to 15 minutes late. I wouldn't want preschool families to be stuck in that line or so that's something we'd look at scheduling wise. And I know Heather's over there having some thoughts about me right now,
We'll deal with logistics, just.
yes, making scheduling changes for her. But that's something we would absolutely. Thank you for that feedback.
I would love to know though, like if we can go in or not, because the 3 and 4-year-olds still need their head held.
Yeah.
From the
Absolutely.
bins and the
Yeah.
jackets and the
And I think that's something that
Just not
we
as independent.
absolutely hear that
Yeah.
120%. Absolutely hear that. And that's, especially those first couple weeks of school, that's important.
Right,
So
the routine.
we would absolutely look at that, and that's something that I can strongly advocate for. Is there a question back there?
That's a real question.
A lot of observations about the library.
Oh, perfect. All right.
Cool place.
I'll just add that at Bartlett, at the public preschool, we have preschool as part of the parent pickup, and we have like 5 or 6 adults, and adults just walk and hold
Sure,
hands with the
sure.
kids and help
Yeah,
them.
yeah. We
Not
you know,
adults it can work.
absolutely, and there'd be, we want to make sure that we're adhering, how important it is to make sure our schools are a safe place, but how those, parents are checking in. So I hear that feedback 120% and make sure that we, figure out some way to accommodate that.
On that note, I will advocate for the playground to be in the back of the school. I don't really
Thank you.
love the roadside
Yeah.
thought
Yeah.
process.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Just roll it in
Right?
Just, I'd rather they play with the big kids than
Yep.
be on the set.
I appreciate that, yeah. And that is something that, whether it be, scheduling when they have their outdoor, and preschool sometimes is more, fluid when they can go outside, which is how we want it to be.
And of course, they'll be fenced in, even.
Yes, there'd be a separate,
Right,
yeah, there'd be a
but-
separate.
Yeah, but I get that too.
And I think that, throughout the, 5 or 6 months we've been doing this, we've come up with a lot of different scenarios and big picture and narrowed down, and, we've kind of, as Sarah and Paula and Heidi, can all attest to, we've kind of gone all over the place. And I think what's been really hard is because until we know whether, it's going to go forward, we've been trying not to get bogged down in some of the details and the minutia of the whole thing, even though we've all got it in the back of our heads and we've all got ideas. But it's great to hear from parent perspective what they would want, don't want, looking
Yes.
for as well. And that's been really helpful to us, I think, and, and will be going forward as well.
Well stated.
Thank you.
And I think the reason we want to keep that fluid is to get the great feedback, so we don't have a plan and say, no, we already have our plan. We want to continue to hear that as we funnel down from our big vision where we thought, hey, we need to do something differently to what the day-to-day schedule looks like. So we'll continue. This is obviously once we get the voting results, we'll continue to present, get feedback, as we know once that's kind of our next goalpost. And once we get there, we can kind of figure out get more specific with the program. Yes.
I have another question. Just if it passes and this happens in the fall, and you have like a wonderful turnout of parents wanting to send their kids, but you only have so many spots, how will you choose who gets to come and who doesn't?
And that's one of the things we kind of talked about, is it a lottery system, is it a first come,
Right,
first serve?
yeah.
And I think that that's one of the things, once it's passed, some of those ideas and details are the things that we're gonna have to jump on right away and decide, this is what it's going to be. So, I don't think we've really hit that nail on the head yet, but it's definitely been conversations.
Yes.
I have two things. Are you having parents sign up or whatever ahead of time? Okay, it passes, so now we need commitment from you.
No, because that would be just heartbreaking to me to see all those names on that list and it not pass. So no, I'm not doing that yet.
Or after it passes, when are you asking for parents to enroll their kids?
Yes, once that, we're going to obviously get the word out and make sure we, communicate that out via Blackboard, which is what we use for those great Snell messages that everyone hears my voice at 5 o'clock in the morning. So we'll get that out and let you all know when registration will be, and that's how we would communicate that out.
My next thing is there a summer program?
Is there a summer program? Well, that's another thing we've talked about.
Yeah, I think it kind of went on the back burner
Yeah.
for a while because we're
Because I
depends on what it
know
looks like.
you
and-
guys, or I don't know about you guys, but I know that 9, when they contract with schools, all of those IEP children that are turning 5 will go to their summer program to get acquainted with kindergarten and all those teachers and who will be doing their services.
Sure.
So I don't know, because we haven't really had experience with 13 children in the ESY, but how would that look? Just provided for IEP students, and then unidentified children are left to find summer care, or?
Can I jump in? I'm so sorry.
We have a special guest. Sure.
So to your point, it was something that we've discussed a lot because we know that it's hard for parents to give up their place, their spot at wherever they are and know oh no, then what am I gonna do for summer? So I think that's one of those we need to, when we get into those logistics, that's what we need to identify. So what is your need? You're registering your kid, half day, full day, what do you want? But then what's the need for the before school, the after school, and the summer? So we could look at that. Now, we're doing more of a preschool program over the summer, or is it more of the daycare? What does that look like? But I feel like we've had all of those conversations, so I'll speak and say nothing's off the table, but it's not a commitment either because we just don't know what the need is. So Sorry if that,
That's great.
but I just
had
like
time
that.
to think for a minute.
We've
That
had
was
lots
perfectly-
of
yes, that was
conversation
exactly
about
what I-
that,
yes.
so I don't feel like we can take it off the table, but I don't think we can say it's definitely on until we can get to that point of really working out logistics.
Right. I think when we built this program out, we wanted to make sure we were cognizant of the financial impact this has while being able to run a great program. So some of the other additions, like the after or before school care, transportation, the summer programming, are all things that we really want to do, but it may not be that very first year. Yes.
I only need one.
And as far as summer goes for IEP students, so if it's in their IEP, there would have to be some
Yeah, whatever the team
Services
decides,
provided.
those
Yes.
services are,
The
yes.
IEP is gospel. Yes.
Okay.
What's Blackboard? And I don't have a kid in the school system.
Oh,
so,
sure.
Like, how do I get all this information?
Oh, yeah, so we would.
you to it if you
Yes, I'd be happy to add you to that.
Is
Yeah,
there
okay.
like a public place to like join?
We
in?
would make sure, so that's one of the vehicles that we would use to push information out, but we'd also do the typical flyers we'd put out. So I didn't mean to make it sound like we're just gonna put it out on Blackboard, which is our all-school communication system that we use to push out, but we put it on the website, we probably put it in the newspaper, all those pieces.
The only reason I'm here is because she put it in the Madison group. So like, if it wasn't for the Madison group, I'd have
Perfect,
no
then
idea
it will
what's
be
happening.
in the Madison
Yeah,
group,
like
consider it
I
done,
love
yes.
Facebook, man.
And we'll do it.
But I just was
Thank
curious
you.
if Blackboard was like a public thing, or you have to have an enrolled.
You enroll,
Yeah.
once you have a student in the system that you enroll, but you made another great point that if you don't have a student in the system, how are you gonna get that information? So thank you, yes, we will make sure that we leave no stone unturned when we're
Yeah.
doing that.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you. Yes?
Do you have a pulse, new to the Madison area, so do you guys have a pulse on whether the warrant article might get passed? Has this been attempted in the past?
So I'm not gonna speak, and I really can't tell you, this group, that you have, I can't tell you one way to vote for it or not, but I can tell you from an educational standpoint, it makes really great sense. It gives people more options. We get a chance to see the students in our pipeline. We can provide them in a great school environment, get them introduced to where they're gonna be going to school, get them used to a public setting. And then from a financial standpoint, it really makes sense. It just really, really makes sense. And in the upcoming years, we're not only talking about breaking even, but potentially a really a saving. Yes, Jim.
If I might talk to that question.
Yeah, please.
So, the vote for the SAU budget is a cumulative vote of Madison, Tamworth, and Freedom.
Okay.
So, at the end of the day, Madison could pass it unanimously, and if Freedom and Tamworth have enough votes no, it would fail. So what I would say is, if it is something you are supporting or not supporting, to reach out to your friends and neighbors in Tamworth and Freedom as well, and have a discussion with them about the voting process also. Because the SAU budget is voted on in all 3 districts, and it is a cumulative vote of all 3 towns. So it would pass by 1 vote or fail by 1. It could pass or fail by 1 vote.
Thank you, Jim.
Are you guys gonna put it in the paper?
To vote?
No, just, well,
Sorry.
we should all vote.
Sorry, I was on the voting track. As far as when to register and the.
Well, just more about the program. I feel like the more it's in people's faces,
Yeah.
you know,
That's great.
there's so many people that just don't know.
So what I think that's wonderful feedback. We'll make sure it's on the website. I believe it is. We have a section, but also if folks want this information, I'm happy to send it to you via email. And if you think that would help educate your friend group or your colleagues, I'm happy to send that to you.
You can always do a letter to the editor. People do that all the time, with
Oh,
encouraging people to vote in one way or the other.
Paul.
I also had somebody approach me just the other day, and they were saying, what is this about the preschool? And I was talking to them, and their understanding was that Madison was picking up the cost.
No.
And they were a Madison resident. Well, that's what I said. I said, no, this is what's happening, but there is some ideas out there that, like you said, more clarity and more, I don't know how, more information out there maybe. And I'm wondering, to your point, when you start, when we all start thinking about, we want to let the preschool parents know,
Mhm.
should we look at the census or whatever, and then send them a letter.
Right, well, that's
An
what,
individual
yep.
letter to each family to say, this is happening.
Yeah,
you
yep.
know?
That's a good suggestion. Yes, I think we can talk about all those things. I want to be sensitive to other daycare providers that don't want to be look
Absolutely.
like we're trying to.
Oh, right.
This is about options for kids.
Yeah,
This is about finding a good
options,
spot
yes.
for them to be,
Yeah.
that they can make that educated choice. But I think finding a good
Yeah.
mechanism to communicate that out. I know Child Find will be talking about when this program, we'll know if it's approved or not. We'll be able to speak to that during Child Find, which we heavily advertise for as well.
Yeah, I just.
Gretchen?
Could you put an article in the newspaper explaining it, and then that way it'd get out there?
Yeah,
Not,
yeah.
you know, bias one or the other,
Right.
just the basics.
The information.
Yes, it is in my annual report. If you picked up any of those, I did highlight that in the annual report. But yes, I'm open to all suggestions. I'm happy to. I'll wear one of those sandwich boards around too and tell people to tell all the information. So.
And I'm guessing this will come up.
I'm in for that.
Okay, there we go.
I'm guessing this will come up. We have there's a school budget meeting like next week, isn't there?
Deliberative session
Yes.
is
Right.
next Monday
You should
night.
all come.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's on the calendar, but that'll hopefully come
There will
up.
be conversation about it at
Absolutely.
that
Yeah,
night as
that's a
well.
good point, yeah. So please come to that too.
Yes, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, yes.
And if this all goes forward, what is the plan, or have you thought that far for any sort of modifications to the building, and when that would start, and disruption to the current, staff and students, or is this all over the summer? and-
Ideally, this would be done over the summer. We would, once we got that, the vote in, we would start, from an administrative point of view, start figuring out what what are the pieces we need, aligning up those contractors, lining up what we need, which we already have a pretty good idea, but we'd solidify that. But the idea that it would be, you want to keep things as least disruptive for the kids in school, so that a lot of that work will be done over the summer.
Does Madison have room to grow? Just say this program, if you send this letter out and
Yes.
there's 60 children that want to come. I don't necessarily, I'm just
Love it.
saying,
Yes.
is there another room? Like, is there expansion opportunities here?
Yes, Heidi's room is available.
Oh, we just gave away Heidi's room.
You can take over the office.
I mean, in reality, there's like this wing down here that has some spaces that we could take advantage of.
I love that question, and I love the optimism. I think what we want to do is make sure that we walk before we run. And we've done this program before. We know we can provide an excellent early childhood program for our students. But I think to make sure that we are doing an excellent job, we probably want to keep those numbers low. Start or at that 24 to 27 mark. And then if we needed to expand, that would be something we'd look to in future years. But I think
Yes, there's
Also,
always
momentum and
Yes.
interest in, if we can get it up and going well, then other towns, so then we wouldn't be the only one having it, then.
Right.
As far as a big vision of what would we like, if Tamworth could then
They
have
all have their
enough
own.
to do that.
And we have a great relationship with some of those other preschool providers, early childhood centers, and we certainly don't want to be the antagonist to that. It's about providing options and talking with those folks. I mean, looking at the wait list they have, I really think that 24 to 27 mark will not be disruptive, especially when you spread it across all three towns. So
No, and
that's-
I'm like thinking as a taxpayer, right?
Yes,
Like,
yes.
I'm putting my funds into this and then
Yes.
I don't get my kid in.
Yes.
Like, that's disappointing.
Yeah.
So it's
Absolutely.
more just from like a funding standpoint.
Absolutely, absolutely. Other questions?
I'm just curious, how many children are enrolled in the kindergarten classroom right now?
I think we have 16 or 17 in kindergarten right now.
I think it's 17.
Including IEPs?
Oh, that's total enrollment. How many,
No, that's
no,
what
that's just asking.
Yes, yeah.
That's all kindergarten students enrolled.
No, because remember there's
No,
K1
it's
spread
kindergarten.
out. Remember they're all
Right.
mixed.
Right.
It's all multi-age.
I broke out that section on special ed because it's a program that we would need to be cognizant of those special ed numbers in kindergarten. You don't need to.
Gotcha.
But just 17 kindergartners? Okay.
Other questions?
And that's Madison only.
Right.
That's
Do
what
we
makes
have
me
a
nervous.
total enrollment projected for kindergarten for all SAU 13?
We haven't done our
For next year?
completed all our
Or
child.
just in general? what they
Yeah.
are? Well, there's.
Well, you have some
Um,
initial.
I
Yeah.
can give you, there's 17, there's 19, and what is, Tarkus Freedom is multi-age as well. So there's 17 here, there's 19 in Tamworth, and I want to say there's 5 in
Yeah.
Freedom right now, right around that. So what does that put us at? Heather, sure, what numbers? 17.
She's off the clock.
I know, I'm done.
She's done.
38,
So-
38-ish.
So, yeah, so, under 40 right now. So.
17, 19, 5.
So in Madison, we have 17 kindergarten, 12 first graders, and 15 second graders. So just-
So this year's kindergarten age
Is-
students
is bigger
is
than-
higher than the other two.
Right.
And I think there's a trend in numbers, the COVID years, that there were a lot more babies.
Boom.
Yeah, there was a little boom there, so I think we have a trend of some bigger numbers
Wait till you
coming.
get those COVID babies. I know a fiery redhead coming.
Other questions? I don't want anyone to leave here with any questions, so please.
I'm probably
Ask
getting ahead of
away.
myself, but
Yeah.
I mentioned like lunch. Are they gonna treat this preschool as just a normal classroom setting where they travel to art, they travel to gym, they travel to the lunchroom to eat lunch? Like, is that the model?
Most of the settings that I've seen, they bring lunch to the classroom. You want to keep them kind of in that space, but that's not to say that's 100% of the time. Maybe for unified art, they might want to use the gymnasium.
They'd probably be thrilled to
Yeah,
get off
leave the
down.
classroom, that sounds
For
great.
lunch though, usually it's typical to have preschool have lunch in their classroom.
I was just curious how it's gonna.
It'll be a mix between that push-in and then there might be some activities that would make sense for them to go out. But we certainly want to make sure that they're experiencing the great things at Madison Elementary.
Because then when they're in kindergarten, they'll be old pros.
Yes, the library, perfect example. We want them to
Right.
access the library.
Right.
Here's a really random one. Is there a bathroom in the preschool?
Yes.
There is. That's a great question.
Nice.
And they did not have to be potty trained to come as well.
Wow. This teacher's got her work cut out. for her.
Yeah, right. Maybe we should pay them a little more.
As soon as we find out, we're posting for that position. Hopefully. So,
But if you do leave here and have more questions, reach out to us
Yes,
too. Feel
please.
free at any time. Because like I said, your feedback is really helping us to formulate and narrow down some other things that we may have thought of, may not have thought it should go this way, and so, yeah.
I have one last question.
Please.
So if you can't find a dual certified ECE,
Mhm.
general and special ed, which is like the unicorn of.
Mhm. They do exist though, but yeah.
Yes. What, then are you gonna have to hire an ECE or contract out your ECE special ed services?
I think it depends. We'd have to look at models. A regular certified special educator could be the case manager for those kids. We just have to look at the model, depending on who we get. Again, look at those options as far as services.
It's ideal to have that individual
Of
being there,
course.
but yes, to Lisa's point, that would be our second option.
Does the budget support that? 2 people versus 1?
I think so. I think because the roles and responsibilities, if it's one person, then it's
Yeah,
pretty
and-
hefty.
And we do, with any staff, there's we're budgeting for a mid-step, family plan for insurance, and that's how you have to budget, because we want to make sure we can get the best person. So there's some ability to navigate that. Other questions? Well, if you don't, Lisa and I are going to stick around for a little bit if you want to ask us an individual question. Heather's got annual reports over there. Also, if you want to leave your name, if you'd like me to send you a copy of the PowerPoint, I'm happy to do that. That way you can peruse it at your own leisure without me narrating it. And thank you all very much for coming out tonight and taking a vested interest in the future of SAU 13 and Madison Elementary, so I really, really appreciate it. And there's no fireworks to end this, so I'll conclude there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.